Okay, so Wells brings about the idea that, based on Lowell was making this argument that, look, I can see Mars and I can see these canals on Mars. Now, a lot of people have asked questions about the canals, like, well, what was he seeing? And the short answer to that question is we don't know exactly. Although it is, people have been able to get photos of Mars that seem to show things that look like canals on them. Now, if you go look at it with a good telescope, you won't see them. Okay, the canals are kind of an illusion that is visible only with with a intermediate quality telescope. If you have a little small telescope, nope, can't see it. If you have something like the Hubble Space Telescope, you get a nice clear view and no, there's no canals there at all. But in the 19th and early 20th centuries, they were building very good telescopes, not as good as the Hubble, but very good, and they showed enough detail that the eye was somehow tricked into seeing these lines. And even in photos, they could find things that looked like these lines. And that's probably because when we develop photo processing techniques, we tend to do things to photos that our eyes do naturally, our brain does naturally. So probably our photo processing techniques tend to do the exact same thing that our eyeballs tend to do. And so that's why you get these lines on the photos. But anyhow, there's this, Lowell was declaring he could see these canals, and so could other people, Schiaparelli and some other folks are saying, well, then there's these canals that are clearly built by a race of advanced Martians. Now, why would they be advanced? They would be advanced because supposedly they could build a canal in a couple of years, and people on Earth could, all the way across the whole planet, whereas people on Earth could, it would take them years and years and years just to dig a canal, that's 5 or 10 miles long. So clearly, to be able to cut a canal across a planet would involve something on the level of like the Transformers, right? Some sort of giant robots that could just dig through, giant machines that could dig across a planet in 2 years. So that's part of the superior technology idea. Someone says like, well, then where did they come up with the idea of a global socialist government? Why did they have where did they get an idea of the government? Well, it's a global canal network, right? So if it's a global canal network, it must be a global government. And apparently, that must be the logic, because the canals are spanning the entire globe. Okay, then there must not be borders, all right, between, where one side won't deal with the other side. And then there was the idea that the canals seem to change with the seasons across the globe. So the idea that someone must be turning on, opening the floodgates and letting the melted water from the ice on on one pole flood through the canals, or through the pipes in the canals, however they were supposed to be, and irrigate the whole planet at a particular time. Well, how would you coordinate this on a global scale? You'd have to have a global government. You have to have some sort of minister or someone who is in command of all this, who would say, open the floodgates. It is time to irrigate. And they'd open the floodgates and they'd irrigate. And so this is, where you get these ideas of like a global socialist government. A number of students said, made comments to the effect of all of these ideas they think of as pretty screwball, right? Why did Herschel and other astronomers jump to the idea of life on Mars when all they saw were some lines? Okay, not Herschel, Lowell? Why did Lowell and other astronomers jump to the idea of canals on Mars when all they saw were some lines? Why did Herschel jump to the idea of life on the sun? For that matter, why did Johannes Kepler, when he saw the moons of Jupiter, to conclude, oh, well, there must be life on Jupiter? And this comes from what this illustrates is that people interpret the data that they find in light of what they already believe, okay? So in other words, all the astronomers were already convinced that the universe was full of life. Why would the universe not be full of life? Okay, why would Earth be the only planet to have life on it? That was silly. Okay, so if you took someone from 200 years ago and brought them into today, they would say, well, Earth is not the only planet that's going to have life on it. Mars will have life. Venus will have life. Jupiter will have life. Mercury will have life. Saturn will have life. Why would Earth be the only one to have life? Okay, so they all assumed that there was going to be life on stuff, and so then they're interpreting their discoveries in light of what they already expect. Okay, scientists are human beings. We do this sort of thing to some extent. We, our biases and our prejudices influence the way we think about stuff, okay? And this is very clear in this case. Oh, I'm seeing lines on Mars. No one says, A, could it be, some sort of illusion? Even though in that discussion from Lowell, he talks about how they'd appear and then disappear. Okay, well, it was on the very edge of the telescope's ability, right? But he's seeing those lines, so they got to be there, okay? And then, well, why wouldn't they be natural features? No, they're too straight. They're too straight. Where they cross is the way. And so he's interpreting what he sees. And other people did the same thing. They saw this stuff and they interpreted it and said, space aliens. There's Martians on there. And then the immediate interpretation is, of course, that the Martians are very, very powerful. Okay. So keep this in mind. You think, we've learned about our own ideas, because at the same time that people think, well, this is dumb or this is dumb. Now, I have some students, some of y'all are saying, yeah, it's all dumb and I don't believe there's any aliens at all. But there's also quite a few of y'all who are saying, well, they're dumb, but I do believe that there's aliens. Okay. Well, the question is have we seen any aliens anywhere? Do we have any direct evidence of aliens anywhere? Because you know what? Alfred Russel Wallace was right. There's no life on Mercury. There's no life on Venus. Nothing on Mars. Nothing on Jupiter. Nothing on Saturn. Okay, we might find something on those things, but it ain't going to be, intelligent civilizations. All right, you might find that there's some water under the ice of Europa or Enceladus. We know there's water on these worlds, these moons going around Saturn, because we've seen it. We see it geysering out. So there is water down there. Maybe there could be some fish or something, or worms or something like that. But nobody is expecting to find intelligent, spacefaring, advanced canal-cutting fish, okay, or worms. No one's thinking about that, right? And it could well be that the whole solar system is lifeless, okay, except for Earth. So Earth has been discovered to be a unique body, at least within the solar system. So be careful what you're making fun of, because, people in the future may turn and look at us and say, hey, those people, they thought this, So, just bear all that in mind. Okay, now, probably the thing that there was the most questions about was Albert of Saxony's concentric worlds. This was the medieval thinker who thought of the idea of so Aristotle had said, well, there can only be one world. And then, of course, in the condemnation of 1277, where the various church folks in Paris, mainly Stephen Tempier, the bishop, condemned a whole bunch of Aristotelian ideas because they put limits on the power of God. And this was one of them. He said, no, okay, that's wrong. We condemn this idea because God can make as many worlds as God should so see fit. Just to say there can only be one world is to put a limit on the power of God. God can make many worlds. So then they're like, well, suppose God made many worlds. Where would the worlds be? Because, we have to be able to look around and where would God put another world? And one of the things was the concentric worlds, which has to be about my favorite idea in the whole book, honestly. Okay, so to clarify, here's us, here's the Earth. Okay, and we've got people on the Earth. All right, here's the surface of the Earth. And then here's the sun out here going around the Earth. This is a geocentric, like this is a geocentric idea. Okay, because they thought that, this is before Copernicus, so they're thinking that the Earth is the center of the universe. Okay, and the four elements and all the fifth element, all that jazz. So the sun's going around, okay? And Albert of Saxony thought, well, wait a minute, what if you bored down deep within the Earth? Well, there could be another universe down inside our Earth, okay? You bore down through the Earth and you'd find that there's stars inside the Earth, okay? And then there would be planets and a sun and a moon and another smaller Earth down in the center of that with smaller people on them, okay? And then, in fact, inside of that Earth, there would be, stars and a sun and a moon, and there would be an even smaller Earth at the center of that with people on it. And then you could bore down through that Earth, and there'd be a smaller Earth inside of that with people and with its own sun and moon and stars and so on and so forth. And so that you would have an infinite number of Earths one inside the other. Whole universes, in fact, one inside of the other, going all the way down. And likewise, if you went up from our Earth and you went through the stars, you could break through the stars and you break through the shell of a giant Earth that encloses our entire universe, where there would be giant people, okay, walking around on it. And if you went up through that, you would go to the right. So you would have one inside of another, inside of another, inside of another, inside of another, infinitely. Okay. This is, of course, someone asked about the idea of a multiverse. And this is, in fact, an infinite multiverse, because there's no limit to how many universes you can have, one inside the other, inside the other. And, you know, of course, God being infinitely powerful can make an infinitely many universes. So, you know, this is one of the things that people thought up of. I think it's just a brilliantly creative idea. I love it. I love it. First of all, so how do you know it's not true? Okay, because how deep have we ever gone inside the Earth? Well, go Google it. Go Google the deepest hole or deepest well or deepest mine shaft. All right. The bottom line is you'll find that it's a few miles deep, and it's 4,000 miles to the center of the Earth. So in fact, we've only nicked the surface. So if you went down 500 miles into the Earth, you could easily have a whole other universe in there. Okay. You know, I know you relearn in your class, in textbooks, in grade school about the different layers and stuff, but that is all interpretive. Okay, we've never been down inside the Earth like that. Okay, and you know how scientific ideas can be wrong when you have a very limited amount of evidence. That's one of the things we've talked about in this class. So hey, why not have a whole stars and sun and other world and another Earth in the center, and then another one inside of that? Okay, if you think about it, it works beautifully. As long as you imagine that the fifth element exists, because if this is all fifth element, it's infinitely strong, so it can hold up this world, no problem. So every world can be held up by the fifth element of the world that's inside of it. Everything still is aiming for the center, so they all share the common gravitational motion, everything trying to go to that one final center. There is no final center. Somebody asked about that. Would there be a final center? No, because you just get another one inside another one inside another one. As someone said, another student said, like Russian nesting dolls. Russian nesting dolls. Man, I can't remember what they're called, what the word is in Russian for, but where it's one doll inside of another doll inside of another doll. But it goes on forever. Okay, and as one of the medieval thinkers said, you know, if you took you and everything around you and made you all 1,000 times bigger or 1,000 times smaller, you'd never know, because you all went up together and down together in size. So, you know, everybody would think that they were just normal, okay? But they're, you know, compared to their own Earth, but compared to each other, there would be the size difference. So this can go out infinitely far, infinitely far. And this was a possible idea to illustrate that God could create as many worlds as you could possibly imagine, and every one of them be inhabited by a race of its own people, okay, which we would think of as aliens, right? Because these would each be a different Earth, and they'd have a different creatures on them, maybe. In fact, you get down to that same problem of having, like we talked about infinite cycles, in that when you have an infinity, everything that is possible to happen must happen. And so somewhere on this infinite concentric worlds, there must be another Professor Graney who's sitting in front of another stupid laptop in another empty classroom in another world full of virus, okay? You know, and then there's also the version of me, in another world, there's also a version of me where, you know, I've like grown my hair out to be like this long and it's white, right? Or I got a mohawk, or, you know, I'm green in color, okay? Or, you know, I have conquered and ruled the entire world with an iron fist. Or I'm hated by everyone and I'm only kept alive in order to be tortured on a daily basis. You know, something like whatever bizarre version of reality you want to come up with, everything, you know, you get into that whole screwball infinity thing, which is, you know, has its own problems. Okay, there's not easy answers in any of this kind of stuff. So anyhow, I hope that sort of explains the whole worlds within worlds. I think, oh, someone said, you can't disprove that, can you? No, you can't, right? Not unless you go get yourself a boring machine and bore down really deep into the earth to make sure it's not there. Yeah, you can't disprove that. And let's see, someone mentioned, I mentioned the multiverse theory and how this would work. So I think I've hit all the major questions that people had on this.